Hello, welcome to another Walkie Talkie. Now, just putting it out there, there's probably not going to be one tomorrow. It'll probably be a Doom 3 video, and I'll probably carry on recording the footage of Resurrection of Evil. The simple reason being, tomorrow, according to the weather, is going to be quite blustery and raining. We'll see how it goes, but that's likely to be what happens tomorrow. I can do either, but I can't do both, because trying to hold the camera and an umbrella in high winds and rain, that's a combo that's not going to happen. But we'll see what the weather's like tomorrow. But just looking ahead, it's not looking promising. So provisionally, I'm just going to stick a Doom 3 video, which I think is the last. It's either the penultimate or the last one of my playthrough, and then we're on to Resurrection of Evil and the playthrough of that. And I think it's either the Lost Missions or the Lost Levels it's called. I'll have to have a look. But there'll be something up anyway. So yeah, that's that bit done. And I have absolutely no topic coming out today, because at one point it didn't look like I was going to be doing this. It was raining and the wind is picking up a bit, so I thought this might not be clever, but it's eased off, and according to my ever so trusty weather app, it should be okay for the next couple of hours, which is more than enough time to do this. So I didn't really have anything in the can as it were, to record with. Well, not record with, but record about. So this is going to be fun, isn't it? I have to try and make something up. I don't want to keep banging the drum about how daft Microsoft are being with the Xbox, the risk of just becoming repetitive. It's not necessary. And I'm just waiting in the wings. I tell you what I will talk about a bit and see how far it goes with that, is the criticism levelled at Nintendo as it starts to rain. I can't believe it. It's actually raining. This weather app is absolutely fired. It's shockingly bad. But anyway, yeah. People jumping on this bashing Nintendo bandwagon with the Switch 2 due to what they perceive are things that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, like they say bricking people's consoles, usual hysterical overreaction to things that simply are not true. Now, they're not bricking consoles, they were blocking people from going online. And the reason why is because they were using unsanctioned hardware to modify the console, which is something I'll get into when I get to the park because he also dials into the whole business of people getting hysterical over half-truths and jumping on bandwagons, which in turn seems to have this weird knock-on effect, and it's really annoying. It's really annoying, to be honest, because people just don't listen to facts. But anyway, I'll see you in the park. Oh, dear God, that wind is cold. Right, so as I was saying, the issue I have with people that we're getting all it. Well, let's take a little bit of a dive into what this thing is. There was a cartridge apparently that was available for the Switch that allowed you to copy your games onto this one cartridge, and so you didn't have to keep swapping the cartridges out. So first up, this device allows you to copy games. Okay, are we seeing the problem already here that Nintendo might have with this device? I am. You can copy games onto this cartridge, so that means you don't need the original cartridge anymore, because you're not swapping the games, so you don't need that. Problem? Yeah, big problem. That's illegal. You're basically pirating games. Yes, you might own that game, but what's to stop you trading that game or getting rid of it at a later date, but still keeping the one that you've got copied on that cartridge? That doesn't seem right, because the whole purpose of that cartridge is basically acting like a carousel for your games, so you're not having to keep putting the original cartridge in. So in order for that to work, you're essentially going to have to have that cartridge function without accessing the other, otherwise it defeats the objective. Yeah. So of course Nintendo are going to be rightfully miffed about it. Why wouldn't they be? But that's not all. This cartridge also allowed you to cheat, and I think it also allowed you to cheat in the online portion of some of the games. Now I'm a bit more hazy on that one as to what the specifics are, but that was what was cited as what this thing can do. And again, I think Nintendo rightfully being miffed about that is fine. I think that is absolutely acceptable, that they would be upset about a cartridge coming to marketplace which allows you to cheat and also allows you to copy games. Now there's, in the terms and conditions, it states that, modifying a console to operate beyond its beyond its intended function is a violation of terms and conditions. Now, what Nintendo are doing when they detect this cartridge in the hardware is they are essentially blocking people and blocking their access to the online. They're not bricking a console. A brick console doesn't work. Okay, when you've bricked a games console, it doesn't work. Alright? Disabling the online element of the console so you can't play it online, it's not bricking the console. That's preventing you from cheating online. And apparently that was the cause of outrage for people who now went forth and attacked Nintendo for doing that, which is, I just think, is ridiculous. So basically what you want is the right to copy games illegally, and you want the right to be able to cheat online. I'm not correlating where you have a leg to stand on with that. In either case, it's dodgy. In either case, it's out of order. But somehow, I guess you could call them self-entitled mob, which is what they are. You know, they want me to be entitled to do whatever they want at the expense of others. I've been attacked by a fly this time of the year. And how insane is that? Look at that current bun. The weather is all over the place. Literally a few minutes ago it was raining, and now look at this. It's insane. Anyway, so they want the right to be able to do whatever they want. They say, well, I own the console. Yes, you do. Nintendo are not kicking the door down and taking the console off you, nor are they preventing you from using it. What they're doing is saying you can't go online and play online. Now that's the risk you take. When we're not talking about an old console here, you know, where people install their games onto a console and it's got custom hardware in it, you know, like the original Xbox or not, you know, an old 360 where you install your games library on there so you can play without needing the disc. That's old. This is current. And in any event, you're not cheating in that sense. If you're installing your software that you own, the old console didn't have that functionality, but with a bit of jiggery pokery you can get it to do that. That actually technically isn't violating the terms and conditions, nor is it illegal. If you buy any of these retro games consoles where you know they come with, say, 20 odd games pre-installed, they do link you to websites where you can download ROMs for those games, with the caveat that you own that game. So if you own the game on cassette or disc, then you're all right. Where I see an issue and where I see a problem is when you have a current system and people are violating the online part of it. You know, people are not using it in accordance with the T's and C's, and they're going online and cheating. I don't online game, as you know. So this is not an issue personally for me, but it would be if I did. If I was an online gamer, I would be miffed if I was playing with somebody and that person that person was deliberately using cheats to ruin the experience. I just got rain on my head. Exactly where from? But the sky is blue, unless it came off that tree. So, where do you how do you equate that being a bad thing that Nintendo is doing? And I guess, like I say, I think it just dials into the sense of entitlement that people have these days. And then there were the complaints about, oh, Nintendo jacked the price. But actually, before I get to that, can I just rewind and say that back in the day, if you modified the DVD-ROM drive in an Xbox 360 and it wasn't done by an official Microsoft repair center, they bricked your console, by the way. So that's not a new thing. They bricked your console. So, where do they get off on acting as if this is a new thing? And I think Sony did the same thing as well with theirs. Like, you cannot modify consoles and go online. It's that simple. If you're going to do that, you have to stay offline. There were people that would jailbreak PSPs back in the day, with the firmware. But if you did a firmware update on a PSP that had been jailbroken, you got bricked. Same with the Vita. If you're doing anything like that, it's going to get bricked. And I mean bricked with that. They ceased to function. That was how it was. But anyway, and the people are also moaning about Nintendo sticking the price up of their games, whilst not talking about the fact that both Sony and Microsoft have already done that. Nintendo games their first party games have always been more expensive because they retain their value. They've always retained their value above and beyond any other game in the market. So, again, nothing new. You would pay more for a first party Super Nintendo game than you would a first party Sega game or Sony game. That's always been the way. That's how it was back in the day. So again, are these people just a lot that's just come along in the last sort of 10 years and don't understand this, don't know this, and are complaining, I guess? But it's nothing new for any of us that have been around any substantial period of time in gaming. Will tell you that's always been the case, because their games retain their value. You'll very rarely see a first party Nintendo game on sale. They just don't. And I guess people just don't know that. I guess people just aren't familiar with that. But that's on them. That's just lack of knowledge. I personally expect that. You're going to ask me if it's worth it? I don't know, depends on the game. I love Super Mario Kart. Do I think it's worth the price that they're asking for you when you buy the physical release? I don't know. I got it with the console, so it was, I think it worked out about £40 because it was a code that came with the console. So I think it was worth that, but again, it depends on how much you play it. You know, I think it just depends on how much you play it. I think if you're playing it all the time and you're playing it online and getting good usage out of it, then yeah, it perhaps is. You know, perhaps is worth it. If you're just playing it now and then no, well then don't buy it. You know, get the older one. That still works. The one that came out on the Switch. Is that Super Mario Kart 8, is it? I think it is. That still works. Get that one. But don't single a company out for doing something that all the other companies do, yet somehow don't get flack for it. And I wonder where it comes from, you know, this. It always seems to me that if a company has a really successful console, when it comes to the next one, it always seems that the knives are out for it. And sometimes it's justified. And other times, it's like nitpicking or mass hysteria. There's this whole notion of everything that they do is wrong, even when it's not. Even when it's not an issue, it becomes one. And if they try to remedy the problem, that gets ignored. Sony with the PS3 is an example. The PS2 was massively successful. The PS3 comes out and people hate it. Xbox 360 comes out, Xbox One comes out, people hate it. I mean, how many people focus on the fact that Microsoft improved that console, that Microsoft did what people wanted, gave what people wanted? Who actually talks about that? No, they bang the drum continuously about how rubbish it was based upon how they fumbled the launch of it. People don't talk about how Sony turned the PS3 around. They released the PS3 Slim and they stripped out a lot of the pointless stuff that no one was using to lower the price of the console. I had both. I had the launch edition and I had the Slim. My launch edition, unfortunately, started to develop a fault. I think the GPU went faulty in it. I was playing Demon Souls, and suddenly all of the textures started to disappear. The environmental textures started to vanish, and then it would start flashing a yellow light. I guess that was the infamous yellow light of death. That was after a few years of having it, but it started to do it on all of the games that I had, and that started to become a bit of a problem. It started out with Demon Souls, and then it just started happening in other games, so I got rid of it and got the PS3 Slim, and that was a great little console. It wasn't the George Foreman grill sized behemoth that the PS3 was. The only drawback was I couldn't play PS2 games anymore in it because, for whatever reason, they stripped that out of the console. I could still play PS1 games just fine. In fact, it had a rather nifty little thing where it would smooth the textures. Whether or not you felt that that improved the image quality is down to your personal taste. I thought it did all right. Thought there were some games that benefited from it. Some games, it made them look a bit like plasticine. But overall, it was all right. But yeah, that. The PS4 came out, everyone loved it. So, you know, this sudden blue sky has disappeared rather quickly. But yeah, PS4 come out, and really based on the fact that everyone had jumped on the 360, the previous generation. Xbox One gets battered, PS4 gets held aloft. And then you do get the exception, like the PS5 seems to have been held aloft. But then I think a lot of that has boiled down to Microsoft basically planting a landmine and then stepping on it by not supporting the Series X with excellent first-party games. I think if they'd have done that, I think you'd have seen a bit of a different assessment of this current generation. I don't even think this generation's ever got going, to be honest. I think this has been the most uninspiring generation of consoles I've ever seen. I really do. I've never known anything like it. It's just so little to be excited about with a lot of the releases. A lot of the releases. Well, Microsoft have done that to themselves, haven't they? But yeah, where are we at? Yeah. Well, I think people just need to wind their necks in a bit, and all of these people that are sort of continuously nitpicking everything that Nintendo do and say, oh, what are they doing? They're the greatest. Do you know the biggest problem with the Switch 2 is a lack of software? That's the focus of, I would be saying about them. I think they've launched really light in terms of games for the Switch too. And it beggars belief, really. I've never known a Nintendo console launch with such a limited number of games, first party game, or exclusive games. I've never known it. So, but anyway, it's getting busy around here, so I'll call it there, and I'll see you in the next one.